Hey, my name is Vitaly Zaidman and I've created a library by the name of Why Did You Render that helps to monitor performance in React, and I would like to show you how it works. What you see here is a header that hides itself while you scroll. I think it's a pretty popular behavior in many websites. I use this hook that a friend of mine wrote to implement this behavior, and basically the hook subscribes to scrolling and gives us a new header height while we scroll. And as we can see, the application is comprised out of this header that changes its height while we scroll, and main. The header is pretty simple. We have a logo here, we have this label here, and we have an input that we will look upon in a moment. That's it, basically. Main simulates a pretty big application. Main is the green part behind the header, and it's comprised out of 2000 components. I think it's a relatively good simulation of a medium to big application. So the big part behind the header, it has a log that whenever the component renders, we see this log here. And that's exactly the problem, because it's a pretty big component, a pretty heavy component to render. And especially at the very top of the hierarchy of the components, we can find these performance issues where something renders and it causes the whole application to re-render, which might be crucial. It might crash performance, especially if it happens on a user interaction like scrolling or clicking. So how can we fix it? If you use the checkbox here, then instead of using the basic main component, we use the pure version of main instead. And now, as you can see, I scroll and it works much faster. See? Why it happens? It happens because the moment main becomes pure, since it doesn't has any properties, it won't re-render anymore at all. So it renders only once. Let's refresh the page. Let's make main pure. And now, no matter how many times I scroll, it didn't render after it became pure. Okay, let's complicate this example just a little. Let's pass background color to main. It doesn't actually use it behind the scenes, but you will see why I use this example in a moment. Now when I make main pure, it still re-renders. And that's the problem that my library is going to solve. I'll show you in a moment how it solves it. So the problem here is that main receives a new style on each render. And since it's a new style, main re-renders although it's pure. Behind the scenes, it does a comparison of this fashion. Okay, because again, it's a new object on every render. We can solve it by moving the whole thing to a hook, something like main style. That's, by the way, one of the use cases of useMemo. Makes sure that the style object is exactly the same object that was generated on the first render of app, instead of being a new object on each render. Let's refresh the page, make it pure, and now whenever I scroll, no renders. It's rendered only once. Okay, so that's the solution to the problem. Let's revert the code to the point where we did have the problem. Let's make sure that we have the problem. We make the component pure and we start scrolling and we see all these renders. Okay, so now we have the problem. And now I introduce you why did you render. So that's how it works. First of all, you add the library. Good. Now we create a file for why did you render.js, and we paste the code from the readme inside the library, and as you can see it says track all pure components. It means that the library looks at pure components. Later we can decide to look at slightly other components, but usually I think these settings are sufficient. Now I'm going back to index and I import this new file that I've just created as the first import in the application. And what it does is that it basically patches React to track problems with, in this case, pure components, but the components that you choose. So here, and again, so I introduced this problem earlier. Now when I will scroll, we will see all these logs coming out. I will just use the native logger of Chrome to see the logs a little better. Okay, so I'm scrolling a little and we can see that main was rendered because of props changes. And what props changed? So it's that style, and indeed style is a problematic object. We can see that it says that the objects are different, but they're equal by value. And that's usually the problem we indeed have. We can also see that the main component was rendered by app, which is indeed the component that rendered main. We can also see that it caused by a render of a hook that changed in this manner. And this way we can know that the problem is that the hook here has changed and it caused main to re-render with its problematic property style. Now I just show you that when we return the correct version, you can see that there are no logs anymore, and also that obviously the component works correctly. So that's it. So that's what my library can do for you. It catches also some other use cases regarding these properties. For example, it catches cases when we do something like this. The problem in this case is that this is always a new function on each render, and it breaks the main's pure behavior, because even though main is pure, since it would receive a new onClick function on each render, just like the problem we had with the main style object, it would just re-render on each render, although it's pure, like this. And we can see that indeed, one second, that indeed onClick is different functions with the same name. Okay, so basically that's what my library can do for you. I hope you would try it and you would like it and you would use it in all your applications. That's it, thank you.